Hi there, I'm Kyle, and this summer I'll be thru hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. What is a thru hike? A thru hike is a long-distance backpacking trek through the backcountry that is completed in one rolling calendar year. Now, a thru hike is different from a section hike because a section hike, you go out and you hike a section of a long-distance trail. And you can hike multiple sections over the course of many years, and eventually you can complete that same long-distance trail. But that's not considered a thru hike because it's not completed in one rolling year. Now, when people refer to thru hikes, they usually refer to one of the 3 Triple Crown hikes of American backpacking. Those hikes are the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Pacific Crest Trail. The Appalachian Trail is a 2,200-mile trail stretching from Springer Mountain in Georgia up through the Appalachian Mountains and ending in Mount Katahdin in Maine. This trail goes through Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. The Continental Divide Trail is a 3,100-mile trail between Mexico and Canada following the Continental Divide. This trail starts at the Mexican border in New Mexico, goes up through Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and ends at the Canadian border. And then we come to the Pacific Crest Trail, or the PCT. The PCT is a 2,650-mile trail stretching between Mexico and Canada, going through California, Oregon, and Washington, following first the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and then the Cascade mountain range. All 3 of these Triple Crown hikes take about 6 months to complete. The PCT was designated a National Scenic Trail in 1968 and officially completed in 1993. It can be divided into 5 sections: the desert, the High Sierra, Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. Most people start at the southern terminus and hike northbound because the weather tends to make for easier logistics, and you'll see what I mean when I get into the challenges in each section. Now, there are a good amount of small towns not far from the trail throughout the entirety of the PCT, so whenever the trail intersects a road, I'll be able to hitch a ride into town, resupply on food and other consumables every week or so, and then hitch a ride back to the trailhead and continue hiking. First up is the desert. The trail here spends time in both the low and high deserts. From the southern terminus on the Mexican border at mile marker 0 to Kennedy Meadows at mile marker 702. The desert section follows the Laguna, Santa Rosa, San Jacinto, San Bernardino, San Gabriel, and Libre mountain ranges before dipping down into the Mojave Desert and then traversing the Tecapi mountain range before arriving at Kennedy Meadows. The desert is all about extremes. It can get quite hot during the day, but the nights can get surprisingly cold. This is why if you're starting the PCT going northbound, you really only have the end of March, April, and the beginning of May as your starting window. After May, the desert gets dangerously hot and dangerously dry as the seasonal streams dry up. This entire section is pretty dry and arid, with water sources few and far between, creating the biggest challenge in this section. Wildlife in the desert includes rattlesnakes, scorpions, lizards, cows, coyotes, and lots of bugs. Once I get to Kennedy Meadows at mile 702, I'll be entering the High Sierra section. This section quickly rises in elevation as it follows the high passes through Sequoia National Park, Kings Canyon National Park, and Yosemite National Park before coming down out of the High Sierras into Lake Tahoe around mile marker 1093. It's in this section that the PCT crosses its highest point at Forester Pass at 13,160 feet. It'll also give the option for a day-long side trip to summit Mount Whitney, the highest point in the continental U.S., at 14,505 feet. Here, the PCT meets up with the JMT, the John Muir Trail, as they share the same trail for a stretch. Weather here can be tricky depending on how much snow the Sierras got buried under during the winter, and if your timing has you enter during the pre-thaw, thaw, or post-thaw windows. If you enter the Sierra too early, you'll face nasty winter storms and soft, high snowpack, making travel extremely difficult. The later you enter, the snow starts to firm up, the winter storms cease, and eventually the snow thaws and melts, forming raging rivers that you'll have to ford. I'll most likely get into the Sierra at the end of the pre-thaw window, meaning the majority of the trail in this section will be buried under a hard blanket of snow. This will require me to carry extra gear to traverse the snow safely and take extra precautions to navigate when the trail isn't visible under the snowpack. Wildlife in this section includes black bears, marmots, foxes, mountain lions, bighorn sheep, and deer, to name a few. After the High Sierras, you come down into Northern California at Lake Tahoe around mile marker 1093. As you follow the trail through Lassen Volcanic National Park, the Klamath Mountains, and into Oregon at mile marker 1662, this section doesn't have nearly the extremes as the desert or the High Sierra. Highlights in Northern California include Lake Tahoe and Mount Shasta, and wildlife in this section includes black bears, mountain lions, raccoon, mink, badger, fox, bobcat, and deer. The Oregon section stretches from Sead Valley at mile marker 1662 through a volcanic landscape to Cascade Locks at the Washington border. That's mile marker 2155. Highlights on this section include Mount Hood, Crater Lake National Park, and the lowest point on the Pacific Crest Trail at Cascade Locks at elevation 180 feet above sea level. Weather here is moderate, but quickly becomes rainy and chilly later in the season. Wildlife here is similar to Northern California. And the fifth and final section, Washington, the Cascade Mountain Range. This section starts as you cross the Bridge of the Gods across the Columbia River at mile marker 2155 and ends at the northern terminus of the PCT on the Canadian border. That's mile marker 2650. The route climbs and dips through the Cascades, and highlights include Goat Rocks Wilderness, Mount Rainier National Park, and Northern Cascades National Park. Weather here is similar to Oregon, as they're both Pacific temperate rainforests. It'll quickly get rainy and cold later into the season, and most people race time in this state as they target completing the trail by October 1st, before the weather turns, winter hits the Cascades, and massive winter storms dump feet of fresh snow on the mountains. So what's next? Well, I'll be coming out with one more video before I get on trail, and that video will be all about the gear I'll be taking with me as I start at the Mexican border and work my way up to the Canadian border. After that, I hit the trail, and while I'm on trail, I'll be coming out with a video every time I get into a resupplied town. So that might be as short as 4 days, that might be as long as 2 weeks, depending on the resupply location and the stretch that I have to carry between them. So I'll post those right here to my channel, so please follow along and wish me good luck out on the Pacific Crest Trail.